The crowd at the dusty auction yard buzzed with restless energy, but no one expected what came next. Cowboys leaned against the rails, spitting tobacco and exchanging bets as the dealer, a wiry man with a grin too slick to trust, dragged back the tarp covering the next lot. The murmurs went dead. Beneath the canvas stood a woman, tall, proud, her wrists bound loosely in front of her. Sunlight caught in her hair like wildfire. The dealer slapped his hand on the wooden stand and barked, "Guaranteed, your money back if she doesn't satisfy you." The words echoed across the silent yard. Men laughed nervously, some out of shock, others out of curiosity. But one man, Eli Cooper, a lone cowboy with dust in his beard and scars that spoke louder than words, didn't laugh. He stepped forward. Eli wasn't looking for company, let alone a woman being sold like livestock. But something in her eyes, steel and sadness twisted together, froze him in place. She didn't look broken, she looked dangerous. The dealer caught his hesitation and leaned in, smirking. "She ain't just a pretty face, cowboy. Knows how to cook, clean, tend a horse, shoot straight. You name it, a miracle in boots." The laughter returned, but Eli's eyes never left hers. He saw no fear there, only challenge. Without another word, he tossed a handful of silver coins onto the table. "I'll take her," he said. The crowd erupted, some jeering, some cheering, but Eli ignored them. The dealer, surprised by the lack of haggling, blinked and handed over a torn bill of sale. "She's yours, cowboy, satisfaction guaranteed, or your money back." He winked, but Eli didn't respond. He walked toward her, cut the rope from her wrists, and said quietly, "You're free now." But the woman didn't move. She tilted her head, studying him. "No one who buys freedom expects nothing," she said, voice low, accent heavy with old sorrow. "What do you want from me?" Eli paused, unsure how to answer. "A fair deal," he said at last. "You help me fix my ranch. You'll have a home and your say in everything." She blinked, stunned by the simplicity of his offer. The others had expected obedience, not partnership. "And if I don't satisfy?" she asked mockingly, repeating the dealer's words. Eli smirked. "Then I'll get my money back," he said, though both knew he'd never ask for it. With that, they walked away, out of the laughter, out of the crowd, into a silence filled with something neither could name. The wind followed them as if carrying a whisper neither could yet understand, that fate had just been sold and bought between two souls who didn't yet know how bound they already were. Part 2. The ranch lay miles from the nearest town, a lonely sprawl of dry earth and dying fences. Eli had lived there alone for years, his only company the ghosts of the past, his father's anger, his mother's silence, and a horse too old to run. When he brought the woman home, even the land seemed to stir. She walked through the fields barefoot, her eyes scanning the horizon as though she could see something he couldn't. "What's your name?" he finally asked one night by the fire. She hesitated before answering. "Mara," she said softly. "It means bitterness." Eli stared into the flames. "Then maybe we'll turn it sweet again." Days turned into weeks. Mara worked beside him, rebuilding fences, tending cattle, cooking meals in the creaking kitchen that had forgotten the sound of laughter. Yet sometimes Eli would catch her staring into the distance, whispering words in a language he didn't know. When he asked, she said nothing, only smiled sadly. Then strange things began happening. Horses calmed when she touched them. Dying crops greened overnight after her whispered prayers. Storms split in half before reaching their land. Eli didn't believe in magic, but he couldn't deny what he saw. "Who are you really?" he asked one evening as thunder rolled beyond the ridge. Mara looked up, eyes glowing faintly in the firelight. "Once, I belonged to a man like that dealer," she said. "He thought he bought my hands, but he took my heart and bound my soul. I ran, but the curse followed me. Any man who claims me for a price, meets ruin." Eli's jaw tightened. "Then I won't claim you. You stay because you want to." Mara shook her head. "It doesn't matter what you want, or what I want. The curse doesn't care for good intentions." Her voice trembled, and for the first time, Eli saw fear in her. "And what happens when the curse comes?" he asked. "It tests you," she whispered. "It asks what kind of man you truly are." That night, the storm finally broke. Wind howled through the rafters, the sky split with white fire, and shadows crawled across the land like living things. Mara stood in the doorway, her hair whipping around her face, her eyes wild. "It's come for you," she said. "Run." But Eli didn't move. He grabbed his rifle, planted his boots in the dirt, and shouted over the storm, I don't run from what's mine to stand for." The lightning struck the barn, and fire erupted. Mara screamed, the curse tearing through her voice like thunder. The air filled with a deafening cry, half wind, half sorrow, half something older than both. Part 3. When dawn came, the fire was out, and the land lay still again. The barn was gone, nothing but smoke and ash. Eli lay unconscious near the well, his clothes scorched, his hands bleeding. Mara knelt beside him, her tears tracing lines through the soot on her cheeks. The curse had tried to break him, but somehow, he'd endured. She placed her palm on his chest and whispered the last of her ancient words. The curse, sensing his defiance, dissolved into the wind. "You fool," she whispered, smiling through tears. "You broke it." When Eli finally opened his eyes, Mara was sitting nearby, the morning sun painting her hair gold. "You should have run," she said softly. He grinned weakly. "And miss my money back guarantee." She laughed then, the sound pure and real, the first time she'd ever truly smiled. The air felt lighter, the land warmer. For the first time, he realized her eyes weren't haunted anymore, they were free. Over the next months, the ranch flourished. Crops grew where dust once lay, cattle multiplied, and the wind sang through the fields instead of howling. Travelers began to speak of the miracle woman, and the cowboy who defied the curse. Eli never corrected them, he just worked beside her, silent, steady, grateful. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, he looked at Mara and said, "You satisfied?" She turned to him, that familiar teasing glint in her eyes. "More than you could ever afford." Years later, when strangers passed through that stretch of land, they swore the ranch glowed at dusk, and if you listened close, you could hear laughter carried on the wind, the laughter of a woman once sold and a cowboy who bought her not with money, but with courage. The dealer's promise had come true after all, but not the way he'd meant it. Eli had been satisfied, not because she belonged to him, but because, against all odds, they'd set each other free. The sun had barely set when Mara's words began to echo inside Eli's head like an omen. "The curse tests you," she had said, but he didn't yet understand what kind of test could break a man more than life already had. The ranch grew eerily still that night. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The cattle pressed against the fence, restless, their eyes gleaming with some animal knowing. Inside the house, the fire hissed low, casting strange, flickering shapes on the walls. Mara sat by the window, her reflection ghost-like against the glass, her lips moving in silent prayer. Eli watched her, the weight of her story pressing on him harder than the storm clouds that were gathering over the hills. Then, all at once, the lamps flickered out. The darkness wasn't ordinary, it felt alive. Eli stood, grabbed his rifle, and pushed the door open. Outside, the world looked wrong. The trees seemed taller, the sky lower, the air thicker. The moon bled red over the horizon. "Mara," he shouted, but she was already beside him, moving with a grace that no human should possess. "It's begun," she whispered. "Don't speak, don't fight what you can't see." But Eli didn't listen. A lifetime of stubbornness burned in him like fire. He stepped off the porch, his boots sinking into soil that pulsed faintly beneath his feet, as if the land itself had a heartbeat. Something moved in the distance. At first, it looked like dust rising, but then the dust took form, human-shaped figures, hundreds of them, crawling from the ground, their hollow eyes fixed on him. Mara's voice trembled. "The men who once claimed me. Their greed chained my spirit. They come again for you." Eli's grip on the rifle tightened. "They'll have to go through me first." He fired into the dark, but the bullets vanished into smoke. The air turned cold enough to freeze his breath mid-air. The figures kept advancing, whispering his name in voices that sounded like wind through dry leaves. Mara reached for him, her fingers glowing faintly, ancient runes appearing across her skin like cracks of light. "You can't kill what's already dead, Eli," she said, her voice filled with desperation. "You must stand your ground, not with force, with faith." He turned to her, disbelief written all over his face. "Faith, I've seen too much to believe in fairy tales." But she stepped closer, her eyes blazing like twin embers. "Then believe in me." She pressed her palm against his chest, and suddenly warmth spread through him, a power unlike anything he'd felt before, like the earth itself had woken inside his veins. The shadows halted, sensing the shift. The wind howled, and lightning cracked open the sky. The old barn doors flew wide, and fire spilled out, forming a circle of flame around them. Mara's hair whipped in the storm, her voice rising in a language that made the air vibrate. Eli could see now. The curse was a living thing, a swarm of lost souls bound to her pain. And they weren't after her. They were after him, testing his heart, his courage, his will. Each step they took closer made the ground quake. Mara's glow dimmed, her strength fading as the curse tried to reclaim her. "You can't save me," she gasped. "If you do, you'll take my burden. You'll never be free." Eli looked at her, the woman who had walked into his life with chains around her heart and fire in her eyes, and something inside him decided. "Then I'll take it," he said. "Better me than you." He grabbed her hand and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight as the storm screamed around them. For a moment, everything went white. The voices stopped. The shadows froze midair and shattered like smoke in sunlight. Silence fell, thick and strange. Mara collapsed against him, her breath trembling. The curse had lifted, but Eli felt it burning now, deep inside his chest, anchoring itself like a brand. When the storm finally passed, the land lay drenched and steaming under the pale moon. The barn smoldered, the fences broken, but the air was calm, eerily calm. Mara stirred, her voice faint. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. Eli brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You said it tests what kind of man I am. Now it knows." She stared at him, her eyes wide, and for the first time, full of both gratitude and fear. "Then heaven help you, Eli Cooper," she said softly. "Because now the curse belongs to you." The night fell silent again, but in that silence, the wind carried something new, not the groan of ghosts, but a heartbeat deep beneath the soil, pulsing in rhythm with his own. The land had chosen its next keeper. Eli didn't know it yet, but that choice would change the meaning of his name, his life, and his soul forever.